Hello and welcome everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. Welcome to another stream. Tonight we are covering episode 2, if you like, in our series of the argument of the existence of God, from an argument, if you like, to challenge the atheist in their claim that there is no God. And last week we covered the existence from an evidence-based perspective, from science, philosophy, and basic logic, if you like, on why we believe that God does exist. I hope you enjoyed that. And like I did say, we're going to cover 2 more arguments to cover this sort of 3-part series. The second one tonight, we're covering the moral argument. Now, I have covered this before, but this time we're doing it from a atheist position rather than just from a Christian position, as in it's really looking at the argument from both sides to see why, and hopefully prove that the Christian position is the correct one. So tonight, to do that, I'm going to get some very valued help. So for those who don't know me, my name is Ray. I'm Ray of Ray for Truth Ministries. And tonight we have a special welcome to a colleague and brother in arms, Wuji, attorney of ETM Apologetics. So welcome, Wuji. You're on mute at the moment. So if you want to say hi, just have to unmute yourself and say hi.
Yes, hello, God bless, and thanks for being here. To all those listening.
Cool. So now, the first argument we looked at was this whole argument over looking at the universe and looking at how logically it has to be that if the fact that we exist and the way that we know the world, the universe, etc., it all points to a intelligent, all-powerful source. And so leading from that was, if there is a God, of course, which we believe there is, because the ultimate perspective is, certainly from advanced science that we've seen over the last number of hundred years, is that science all agree that the world, the universe, had a beginning. And therefore, if it had a beginning, what started or what was the cause at beginning, and we believe and accept that everything has a cause. There's no such thing as an uncaused cause. Everything has an actual cause, and certainly if everything has a beginning, then that beginning must have a cause, which we call God. Now, the only exception, of course, is God himself, because God is eternal, because he cannot have a beginning, because then he would have a cause, and then you would have this infinite regression. Therefore, the cause of all the universe, of everything, must itself be eternal. And that's kind of the argument we placed. And that argument also shows that at the very beginning of the universe, that cause must be all powerful, because it made an incredible universe that is so finely tuned. It also needs to be personal, because it has to make very specific decisions to cause things to come into existence. And the reason why I'm saying that is one of those things that needs to come into existence is us as humans, is this whole thing about our moral framework. And the argument, of course, tonight is looking at the moral argument, is where does ultimately the argument for our moral values come from? So the argument is going to be looked at from two angles. One will be from the atheist position, and we will touch on that, and we will welcome any atheists out there that wants to join. They are welcome to join. And we will also look at the Christian position as well. So this is going to be an interesting topic, and we're going to not actually make this too long, because we've got another stream that we need to ideally jump on afterwards. So we're going to try and keep it within the hour and try and finish pretty much around 9 p.m. UK time. So that's roughly 53, 54, 52 now, 52 minutes from now. So we'll keep an eye on that. So we'll just try and make it fairly short, but still informative, and hopefully the argument will be well put together. So, like I said, the two basic perspectives that we need to look at. And the first one is just as a basic premise to these two positions is, do we accept and believe there is such a thing as objective morality? So in other words, a set of moral codes that we all intrinsically abide to, that just exist. No matter which way we look at it, we all agree that there is this overriding intrinsic set of moral values within the human race. So no matter who you go to, who you speak to, they're all going to agree on the same premise of what those moral values are at a kind of, shall we say, top level. Now, we do appreciate there's a bit more to it. We're not all in agreement. Why is that? That's a very good point. But the fact that we can at least agree that there is this overarching set of moral values that we all agree to and therefore exist just generically, which for me, again, is what I believe is a very good case for God, because every human is individual and has own individual perspectives and opinions. So how can we have a consistent, agreed set of values if it wasn't that these set of values always existed and were sourced from something higher, what we would call a moral giver, if you like, somebody that has the ability to provide these moral values to every single human. So the two perspectives. The first one is looking at it from the atheist position, which is an interesting one. And I'm not saying this is the atheist position right across the board now. Atheists will have definitely a number of different views, but ultimately they will come to the general view that there is what we call subjective morality. And I would agree there is a level of this as well, in that if the atheist position, of course, is that it's all subjective, and they're not necessarily agreeing from the outset, at least, that there is such a thing as objective morality. Now, the problem, of course, is with this: if we do go down this road, then the issue then becomes is, does that mean we don't necessarily have a definite view of what's wrong and what's right, what's good and what's bad? Because if it's down to just subjective opinion, then who is to say that rape is wrong or murder is wrong, and so on? So that's that perspective from the atheist position. From the Christian position, generally speaking, now it doesn't matter if there's a bit of overlap. I mean, if some atheists do believe there is some kind of objective morality, I think that's fair enough. But we're going to put it in perspectives of these different two types of morality. Subjective morality, which if there was just subjective morality, then we would have a real issue about agreeing on what is wrong and what is right, as we just mentioned. But if there is, the second perspective is if there is more objective morality, then we then have to establish that we can then set laws and moral frameworks around it. We can then define what is right and what is wrong based on those moral objectives, because they are, as by definition, ingrained as a definitive set of moral codes. Then, of course, that would mean we can say, yes, rape is wrong and murdering is wrong, stealing is wrong, and so on. And my argument on that would simply be what best explains, morality. Is it from an objectively case, or is it purely from a subjective perspective? So I just see Annie has joined. So welcome, Annie. Thanks for coming on, and I hope you enjoy the stream. She was all the way from America, so thank you for joining. I'm not sure what time it is out there, but I guess it must be about early afternoon. So welcome. So those are the two perspectives. So Woody, getting your contribution, what are your basic thoughts so far over these two perspectives?
Yeah, based on thinking about the perspective of atheism, especially on the moral values, they have no ground that they can stand upon. Because I was a few backs watching a debate between Jeff Durbin and James White, along with two atheist professors.
Yeah.
What when they ask about raping, they say, do you think that those things are wrong? Or they say those things are intersubjectively wrong, but they cannot say it's objectively wrong. So that's the two difference. Even though deep inside their cognitive mind, they know that it's wrong because that they don't want to have an account for God. They try to create their narrative of them determining what is right and what is wrong. You know, so the scripture already tells us, it's not that they don't believe in these things exist. They know that these things exist, but what? Because of their hardness of their heart, they chooses not to believe. And what does God does? Hands them over to their desire. So yep, that's one statement on the moral argument that we can account for. Because God set the moral standard and He determined, He gave us the standard by writing the laws in our hearts, what is right and what is wrong. Despite which is go beyond our feelings, goes beyond our imaginary, goes beyond our subjectivity, that we know certain things is wrong. Because if not, there wouldn't be no laws, there wouldn't be no governments, and everyone wouldn't condemn each other for doing what they feel like doing. No one would condemn Hitler,
Yeah.
but we'll all just do what's best because there's no point. We're all gonna die anyway, so we just do whatever we want. Atheists know they can't say that. They know that they have to condemn someone, judge someone for their action, and say that they're wrong.
Okay. Thank you, Woody. Yeah, so I agree. At the end of the day, an atheist will have to put their hand on their heart, and when you corner them, they cannot deny that rape is wrong and murder is wrong and so on. There were certain things that are clear cut, and that's why we can have juries and laws that are put in place all around the world because we have an agreement that we know is right or wrong. If there was absolutely everything was purely subjective, then lawgivers themselves, the law courts, would just not be able to agree. But we do see a consistency wherever you go, pretty much to anywhere in the world, when it comes to those that, of course, are educated and have done their studies and have gone through setting up these rules and these laws. They all are very much consistent. And I would say those laws are definitely, therefore, we would say is objective. Now, the atheist position still has a bit of a challenge with this because even if they do agree, as I said, when they are cornered, that, okay, we do agree, yeah, we all agree that rape is wrong and so on. Then we're talking about a little bit of semantics a bit and how you define it. But ultimately is if it's purely the case from the atheist position that it's purely subjective, then you've got to say, well, where does that morality come from? And that's where it gets really, really tricky because from their perspective, it's really just part of if there's no God, then it's all part of this evolutionary process. And like I said at the very beginning, if there is no God, then it's just coming from natural causes. But how does a natural cause be so precise about defining good and bad? That really needs to come from something that has intelligence, something that has the ability to define laws. So that's where, an atheist is going to have a real problem to try and explain how is it that we all just have and know what these moral laws are. Now, of course, when you drill down, and this is a very different argument, of course, is there are laws, principles, and so on that aren't so clear cut. And that's when we get into the detail. Yes, we agree. Sometimes we have situations where it's complex and it's not easy to define whether a certain incident is right or wrong, or did somebody commit a wrong or not. And that's why we do have the courts, so they can look at all the evidence. But of course, this evidence is still nevertheless based on a set of moral codes, which we're calling objective morality. So even though there are incidences that are not clear, that doesn't mean it takes away those moral codes. And that's really the difference, because from an atheist position, they would ultimately still nevertheless agree that there are these clear-cut cases of right and wrong, irrespective of subjective. So then it would lead to the question of where does those objective morality codes come from, the source, if you like. And at the moment, all they have is a natural process. And even atheists agree that it's very difficult to come up with evidence, and certainly there is no evidence where it's provided any kind of natural cause of events through some sort of evolutionary process to explain it. So that's why we then lead to the theist position, which we're calling the Christian position, is that objective morality therefore must come from a lawgiver. That makes much more logical sense. And when we talk about the proof of the evidence of God, because we said that everything has a beginning, the universe has a beginning, whatever that cause was must be all powerful, it must be all knowing, and it must have a high degree of intelligence. And therefore, if we have the evidence to say there is a God from that basis, then why can't we then say, if the evidence shows that there is a God, then why would it not make a lot more sense that that God is the one that provides those laws, those moral codes that we live by? Because that makes much more logical sense, and the probability is that that's far more likely that a lawgiver would be the one. And we see that in life, when we look at anything, when we look at, if you like, laws in the world that we see around us, they don't just appear. They have people with intelligence that have the ability to make decisions to put them in place. So when we talk about a higher moral code, then why can't that also be a case that somebody has decided with intelligence to put those codes into place? And that, as an a theist position is, we call that God. That's God is the one who came up with those moral codes. Now, as I say, we're not going to go too much into this, but we're just going to cover a few points on this. Certainly from a theist position, we're going to look at a few scriptures to show you what we're talking about. In Genesis 1, verse 27, let's see if I can get these scriptures up. Excuse me 1 second here. All right. Okay. So if I can get Woody, if you can read these as I knock them out. Let's see if we can get okay. It's just so Genesis 1:27. Let's quickly share my screen. Oops, press the wrong button there. So you can pick which version you want. Can you read that okay, Woody?
If you turn the page bigger.
Yeah, I certainly can. There you go.
Okay, ESV. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them.
So that also is a very good clue in terms of moral values, that if we have these moral values, God is trying to explain how it must come from him, because he's creating us in his image. And that would mean that the qualities that we see in us, are, resembling God himself. That's what God is saying. That's why we are different to other creatures, because we are made in his image, and therefore the qualities of God, you will see some resemblance. And of course, God is a God of love and a God of moral values. Then you would therefore see what those moral values are. And then he goes on to say in Isaiah 33, let's have a quick look at this one. Isaiah 33. Should have had these verses ready, to be honest. Apologies for that. It's just been a very busy week. Just let me know when you can see it, Woody.
Okay, verse 22. Yes, I can. For the Lord is our judge, the Lord is our lawgiver, the Lord is our king, he will save us.
So again, we can see God is making it very clear from the Christian perspective that he's the lawgiver. He's the one who provides the laws. He's actually making it known. Of course, this was written many, many thousands of years ago. So God is making his position very clear that he is the source of the law. James 4 says the same thing. And Romans 2 as well, it's really kind of saying the same thing, that he is the lawgiver, and those are the laws that he provides to man. So those are the laws from God's perspective that we receive, and those are the laws that we are coming under. What are your thoughts, Woody?
Yep, not much to say. Absolutely, he is our lawgiver. And that's how we can know from the biblical worldview. The atheists can reject it, but that's where we stand. Even if we just say, okay, let's just say for a moment that what you said is true, then let's get to their worldview and to see where did they get their standard from, that something is morally objectively evil. and to see how they would respond based on their worldview. If you jump in our worldview and your worldview, which worldviews makes more sense? You know,
Yeah. So this leads us to what we call the moral issue. Um, and basically the point is if there's no God, you know, what explains these morals in terms of what is right and what is wrong? If they just, without a God, they just somehow exist, or just some kind of evolutionary process, it just doesn't make sense, because what it would mean is that it would be just full of subjectivity. And from that perspective, um, you know, what we're looking at is, from an atheist position, we are just creatures. We're just part of that evolutionary process. And therefore, why should it matter whether we, you know, abide by a particular law? Why should we care whether we murder someone or whatever it may be? Who's to say that is necessarily wrong? Because you may have an argument to say, well, the reason why I murder somebody because it benefited me. It was of value to me. And that's part of the survival of the fittest. That's our, animal instinct, if you like, is how the atheist would put it. We're just simply creatures that are just surviving. And all the survival, as you see in around the universe, is full of, or around the earth, sorry, is this survival. And that means they make decisions that are based on that survival over everything else. And of course, if this is the only life we have, because we're just, these evolutionary creatures that just grow old and die and cease at the end of a whatever number of years of life, who's to say how we choose to live it? And this is the problem. We keep coming across that from a atheist position. There's no real need necessarily to follow values. However, they can't get away from the fact that yet, as hard as they try, I'm going to just quote you something here from an atheist, Michael Martin. I thought this was quite interesting. It's not unusual to hear that atheists can be good without God. Atheist Michael Martin argues that the theists give the same reasons as atheists for condemning rape. It violates victims' rights and damages society. What Martin really means is that atheists can be good without believing in God, but they would not be good, have intrinsic worth or moral value without God. Indeed, nothing would exist without him. That is, because humans are made in God's image, is what we're saying. Then they can know what is good even if they do not believe in God. So if there isn't this intrinsic set of values, then they would really not necessarily know. Atheists then can, but yet atheists can still confirm these same values. The only difference is theists can ground these human rights and dignities because they're all made in the image of a supreme, valuable being, which we call God. So all we're doing is to say those values, even if an atheist will just somehow try and say, well, we have the same values intrinsically, except we are, if you like, saying that it's from a different source. We're not saying it's from God. We can still believe these moral values. The problem is they then have to come up with the source. They can't be let off to just say that and then get away with it. They have to now prove that that is what they're really referring to. And that's where we got the real issue, because to say that the source of these moral values is just some evolutionary process, then that is really just so illogical. And the evidence is clear when we look at all the evidence in terms of this intelligent being we call God, then it makes far more sense that that is the source, the lawgiver, if you like, of these moral codes. One nice point somebody said, without God, there is no ontological foundation of such truths. So this is where an atheist can't really identify what is right and wrong. They can't provide an explanation as to why, to simply do not have an adequate basis. They can explain they exist, but they can't, in other words, explain why they exist. Because really they don't have a source. Because just evolving from something that doesn't have a cause, the beginning doesn't have a cause, then it's just all these processes, evolutionary processes, then there is no intrinsic value or source, if you like, to explain such moral codes. And that's where it really, really breaks down um, in terms of, at the end of the day, an atheist could agree, yes, I am kind of agreeing there is these so-called intrinsic moral values that do exist. But the argument that we want to pin to them and hold them to is the source of that, and why are they there? Because if we are just part of this evolutionary process of just existing and like all other life, then we don't really need these level of moral codes. We can just exist and survive and see where it takes us. We're no different to any other creature on this earth, but we clearly are very, very different. And I think that's where you've got to ask the question, why is human so special? Why is it we've got this ability to take these moral values and use them in such a powerful way to add far greater value to life compared to any other creature on the earth? We are very, very special. And that, to me, points to there must be a cause of this. There must be a source to where this all came from. What are your thoughts, Woody?
Yep, I would say you know everything, and we need to get to the source of objective morals, objective moral values. Why do you believe it's matter? And there must be a source that you appeal to point to why that objective moral values matters. And it does to everyone. It does. We believe it's wrong, objectively wrong, but for the Christian perspective worldviews, we believe it's not coming from us that dictates right and wrong, but it comes
Mm.
from the objective intelligibility designer with an intelligent mind that's not bound by time, space, and place, that has grounded
Mm.
in the nature of God, that brings us that right in our conscious ability what is right and wrong. But for the atheist, what is their source? So, yep, you
Yeah,
pretty much in everything.
indeed. Thank you, Woody. So I did like a very good argument. So I've got a link to it. I'm going to just play. It's only a short, I think, 8-9 minutes long. Frank Turek, who's a Christian, kind of put his version, which I really like. So we're going to have this. I'm just going to play this. Just a quick shout out before I do. Hi to Lions Den Orthodox Apologetics. I don't know if I know the person who's part of that. If you want to say hi, who you are, by all means, put it in the chat. If not, no worries, but welcome anyway.
Yeah,
And then also,
I think he is Brother Gareth. Who is,
together. Okay.
yeah.
Are you, all right. Cool. If you wanted, there is. I have pinned the. By the way, the link to the studio. So if anybody wanted to join, you can.
Someone
You.
Matthias says he's an atheist and he asks if it's an open discussion. No, it's you can also join for discussion as well.
Yeah. Yes. Good
So
spot. So that was going to lead. That was. I was coming on to that next. So, welcome, Matthias. So yes. Before I play that video, if you want to join, Matthias, you are welcome, and we can have a discussion. That absolutely. I mean, that's part of what this stream's about. If you do watch my streams, this is not just a case of we just putting our view. We are open to people to join that have an opposite view, so that we can discuss. So that is something that we do here, and we're more than welcome um, to join. So maybe what I can do is if I play the video first, Matthias, if that's okay, and then if you want to join, just hit that pinned link, and then we can discuss it. So let's do that first, and then let's take it from there.
Search has changed. Most marketers can't see where their brand stands in AI.
Morality is ingrained in us through evolution. It's essentially Sam Harris's argument when he debated William Lane Craig. Human flourishing. That's what is moral. We all know that we want it. But I mean, I have my own thoughts about this. But how would you respond to that idea? Why do we need God in order for there to be objective morality, or how does the fact that there is a more objective morality point us to God? But first, is there objective morality? All these questions are integrated into each other.
Let's start. Is there objective morality?
Sure.
I think we know that by intuition.
Okay.
In fact, Jay Budziszewski at UT Austin wrote a book 20 years ago called "What We Can't Not Know," and he basically says this: when you're old enough to know what murder is and what wrong is, you know that murder is wrong. It's not innate knowledge; you weren't born knowing it, but your mind is structured in such a way, based on the fact it's made in the image of God, that when you're old enough, if your mind is functioning properly, you know murder's wrong. Now, you could be talked out of that by bad education or by propaganda, that kind of thing. But properly functioning mind, appropriate age, you know murder's wrong. Now, why would it be wrong if there was no God? It would be just your opinion. And if there's no purpose to life, as atheists say, then you can't say here's the right way to live life and the wrong way to live life. Sometimes I give this illustration, particularly on a college campus. I'll say, how do you know that your quarterback throwing a touchdown is better than your quarterback throwing a pick six? That's when he throws it to the other team and they take it back for a touchdown. And people initially don't get it. They say, well, the rules. No, it's not just the rules. The only way you know a touchdown's better than an interception is the purpose of the game. And you know that a touchdown takes you closer to the purpose and a pick six takes you further away. If there was no purpose to the game, you couldn't make any judgment to say, this is a good play, the touchdown, and this is a bad play, the pick six. Likewise, if there is no purpose to life, you can't say loving somebody is the right way to live and murdering them is the wrong way to live, because there's no objective to life. Without purpose, you can't determine good or bad, right or wrong. Even from a pragmatic perspective, you can't determine that. So there's got to be a purpose, and atheists admit there's no purpose to life. And even Richard Dawkins admits this. He famously said that in a universe of blind physical forces, there is no justice, there is no good, there is no evil. Things just happen, and bad things happen. And he goes on to say, I'm obviously paraphrasing, I don't have it memorized, but he says, we just dance to our DNA. We're just molecular machines, in other words. We're just moist robots. If we're just moist robots, then murdering someone, first of all, we didn't make the free choice to do that. We were just compelled by physics or evolution to do that. Mm-hmm. Or loving them, same thing. It's just what is. It's not an ought. You can't get this ought from biology. You only get an is. This is what happens. How do we have moral obligations if there is no, first of all, is no moral standard and is no authority to say you ought to behave this way? You don't get moral obligations. You might get moral sentiments. You might get, I have this idea that love is better than murder, but you're not obligated to obey love is better than murder if there is no objective moral standard, and there is no good beyond us, and there is no authority beyond us. It's just your opinion. And by the way, as we know, even Richard Dawkins would admit this, Darwinism, evolution, is completely all about the survival of the fittest. Mm-hmm. And that's why he says, I don't want to live in a Darwinian morality, because it is survival of the fittest. Should we kill the weak so the fittest can survive? That's what Hitler did. In fact, he used evolutionary theory in Mein Kampf to advance Nazism, to advance the murder of the Jews, so he could create the Uber race.
And the disabled, right? I remember reading about in the Nazi regime, they just calculatedly obliterated people with disabilities, the weak members of society as well, from a Darwinian motivation.
They obliterated the Jews, the homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, the disabled, gypsies, because they thought they were inferior stock, so to speak. This is eugenics. This is not people made in the image of God. In fact, how did they get the Nazis to murder all those Jews? They said they were subhuman, right? They dehumanized them. So yeah, there is no God. If there is no God, there's nothing ultimately right or wrong. And if you're going to say that evolution is given your moral sentiments, well, they're just your moral sentiments. Then they're not really binding. They're not obligatory. It's just an opinion that you have. And by the way, if evolution has given us all our moral sentiments, evolution has also given us all of our thoughts as well, including the thought that there is no God, including the thought that morality is just a artifact of evolution. So it's really a self-defeating view at the end of the day, Brandon.
Because wouldn't the eugenics that you were talking about actually be moral if the end goal was that the fittest would survive? If that's the definition of what is moral, is the human species becoming stronger and more healthy people going forward in history, then this is something I don't understand. I've never heard like an atheist or evolutionary ethicist answer this particular question. That seems to be actually moral according to that view, if the end goal is fit survival.
Well, what they have to do is smuggle in a standard like human flourishing, which is what Sam Harris does, and we respond to him in the book Stealing from God. They have to smuggle that standard in order to make their system work. But again, if there is no God, not even human flourishing is good, because there is no good. There's no purpose. There's no objective. So human flourishing isn't good either. In fact, if you're going to say human flourishing is the standard, you could also ask which humans? The Nazis?
Staying late again? Yep, got prospect calls to summarize. You really need to switch to Mondays here.
Or people oppose the Nazis. Again, you have no standard by which to judge that. All humans? Who said? You said? What if Hitler comes along and he says, I want to create the Uber race, and I want to get rid of the homosexuals, and I want to get rid of the gypsies, and I want to get rid of the Jehovah's Witnesses, and I want to get rid of the Jews, and I want to get rid of the disabled. I want to do all that. Why is that wrong if there is no God? It's just your opinion. There is no right or wrong if there's no God. And all you can say is, if evolution's true, that, first of all, you wouldn't know it's true because the thought that you have that evolution's true was given to you by evolution. Secondly, it's just the way things are. It's not right or wrong, good or bad. It just is what it is. You don't get this ought from this biological process. You only get an ought from an immaterial moral authority who is righteous himself and is the standard of rightness, and said, here's the objective of life. Love one another. Don't murder one another. That's how you get morality. You don't get it from the bottom up. You get it from the top down.
So your football analogy reminds me a little bit of C.S. Lewis's idea of the measuring stick. He says you have to have an idea of straight in order to know what crooked is. It's that idea of a transcendent thing, or in your analogy, the rules of the game, not just how are we playing it. You can't change that all of the time. There has to actually be an agreed upon, embedded, baked in understanding of how does this game work? What are the rules of engagement? How does the world work? And the idea that we can understand when something is wrong itself reveals that there is something outside of just your opinion versus my opinion.
That's right. Yeah, there's always a standard you're appealing to. In fact, Lewis says in Mere Christianity, if you're going to say that one set of ideas is better than another set of ideas, for example, if you're going to say, and he wrote this during World War II, if you're going to say the Nazi ideas are better than, or the Allied ideas are better than the Nazi ideas, you're implying there's a standard beyond both the Nazis and the Allies to which you're comparing both sets of ideas, right? There's got to be a standard to outside of, say, America and Germany to say, well, America's closer to the truth than Germany was in World War II. What is that standard? That standard has to be outside of both countries. That standard is God's nature. And Lewis also gave the illustration of boats where he said, we might agree that it's better if, there's certain rules of the road when we're out there in the sea. You don't cut me off in a certain way. I won't cut you off, that kind of thing. But you really got to figure out, why are the boats out there to begin with? I mean, what's the purpose of boating? You know, like, where are you going? What are you doing? And without that overall purpose, there's no objective way of saying this is the right way to boat and this is the wrong way to boat, right? There's got to be an overall purpose, and that overall purpose in life, according to Christianity, is to know God and to make Him known, to love God and love one another. And when you do that, you'll know God and you'll make Him known.
Okay. I thought that was very interesting. What are your thoughts, Woody?
He pretty much said everything, but with an analogy that is to move on when it comes to knowing the purpose. If there's no purpose, then we can't. There's no point of telling people the difference between right and wrong. If we don't know why we're here, why we die, there's no point. Unless you steal the very word. I actually have his book, by the way. Let me just. I'm sure. This is his book. You might know about it. It's Stealing from God.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
So
Can you read out the title, because unfortunately, because you're putting it into the camera, it reverses it, so it's like you're looking in a mirror, so it doesn't actually spell out what it says. So if you could read out the title.
It says Stealing from God.
Stealing from God. Okay.
Why atheists need God to make their case. Unless you get into the worldview, they're gonna argue with God, stealing from the worldview, and they're using those same worldview to argue against God. So that's what Frank Turek was actually doing.
Okay. That's certainly a good book. And that's Frank Turek, isn't it? I think I did spot that. So yes, that's a really, really good book. And there's quite a few out there. Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis. I have that book somewhere. That rings a bell. And certainly some of the reading I've done over the years. When we look at this whole thing, yeah, look at you, got it. Nice. Thank you, Woody. So, there are some really good references out there. I don't know if the atheist chap is still around, Matthias. Hope you are, and you've watched that very interesting video. I think it's very thought-provoking. So if you do want to join, here's your opportunity. We are more than welcome to bring you on and let you put your perspective and your view as an atheist. That's not a problem. We're not shy to do that. We do want a back and forth, and if you can't do that necessarily now, if that's not going to be possible, then do let us know, and we will put an offer out there maybe for next week as well. You can join next week, and we'll make the time, because we're not going to have a long stream tonight, because we are involved in some other streams later on, so we can't spare a long version today. We're going to probably finish in the next 10-15 minutes. But Matthias, seriously, we are more than happy to engage. We really are. In fact, we are actually encouraging people, atheists, to come on. And I'll make more of a point of it next week as well. I did do it last week, where I was, in fact, I think there was one or two that did come on. So that is part of our objective, is to have a fair discussion, an open discussion, in order to get to truth. It's not about us just proving a point or trying to, as you say, just make statements of what we believe is true. We want an open discussion. And I thought that video was a good example to make people think. At the end of the day, what we're looking at here is, if we're just part of this, evolutionary process, then it's just the fact that there is moral standards, there is morals. But if there are morals, and we just exist with these morals and we live by these morals, then there's no reason why one person can choose a different set of morals than another. Why should his morals be any different than anybody else's? And then you look at, say, for example, and I thought Hitler was a very, very good example, because he actually justified a lot of his mass killings on the basis of survival of the fittest, the purification of the human race. Because his opinion was that certain forms of humans or types of humans or whatever races, whatever, where he defined and segmented human life, were the ones who were superior to others. People that had disabilities, in his view, were inferior. In a way, they are inferior in a way, if you're talking about a perfected human, because they've got issues or defects or whatever you want to call it. But that doesn't make them any less human. But in his view, it did, because his opinion was, let's get rid of anybody that isn't got what he calls his ultimate standard of perfection. And that was not just from a physical perspective, but also from a mental perspective. If someone is not particularly intelligent, that would be another issue. If they had particular opinions or views that he thought was inferior, like the Jews and certain faiths and beliefs, he saw them as inferior. And that all came under the category of a lesser human. And he justified that by removing these and killing them off, he's purifying the race. So who's to say from an atheist point of view, why is that not right? Why is that okay? Why is that not okay? Sorry. So it really says that unless there is a higher level over and above human levels in terms of any human group that possess and put forward a claim of what is right and what is wrong ultimately, then everything is up to grabs. And that would make that for me would put the world in a very precarious position, because no one can really define what is right and wrong over another. It's going to be purely down to a subjective view. And this is what Frank was trying to express. There must be this higher authority that overrides these moral views. There must be a moral giver, which we call God, for this to in any way make sense, for it to, because otherwise it's just morals that just exist. There's got to be a moral giver, like everything else. When we see anything that is defined in that way, in a very, very precise way, whether it's the universe, the way the universe works, or whatever it may be, or the way we see life as we know it, it all points to a source, a cause. So why can't the moral aspect also be a lawgiver, being the cause of the moral codes and moral values that we have, that we intrinsically know we have, whether we can argue them or not? We all agree they exist. We can't deny it. But if there's no God, then it's just a random set of, as it says, Richard Dawkins, that we're just some floating random process of DNA code that just floats around, going certain directions, because there is, without God, no real purpose in life. We just exist, we make the most of it, and then we die. That's it. So if that's the case, and there's no God, there's no purpose to life, and that's it, then there's no need, no reason to have any moral codes that overarch and define us, because there's no purpose for them. We could just survive without them. We just survive as we see fit, and make our own laws, make our own moral codes that we see that benefits us. Because that's all it would be otherwise. And that's really what Frank was really trying to say. I'm waffling on a bit, so what do you think?
Yep, that is so true. And even Matthias, as he said, that there are logical reasons other than absolute morals to want to live in harmony. Yeah, well, first of all, my question would be, where is the source of your logical reasoning? Where does it come from? Does it come from your own subjectivity of intellect, or is it an absolute truth that your logical reasoning is the ultimate reality of why we want to live? So that will be the first question. And he says, it makes life easier. What makes life easier? How do you know that it makes life easier? Based on your worldview. Hitler thinking that murdering thousands of people makes life easier. Would you say that he's wrong? If you say, well, it causes harm, how do you know that it causes harm? What standard? See, so
Yeah.
you could dismiss the absolute morals, but when you're being challenging on your logical reasoning, you still have to go to your moral reasoning. Well, it causes harm, or those things are morally wrong. Back to your dilemma, right? Whether you think we have a higher purpose or not. So, according to his view, he believed that Matthias believed that it's possible that we may not have purpose, even if we
Mm.
believe it or not. But if we don't have no purpose in this life, there's no point of us uh, worrying about what people do or what people say or what people think. If we have no purpose in life, everyone is under their own subjectivity. There is no point of us condemning or judging others for their actions. There is no point of condemning someone for their murders. There is no point of someone raping a young child or other people. There is no point because it's just your own opinion. Just do what you want. Because at the end of the day, we're all gonna die. See, based on your worldview, atheistic worldview that we live in, agnostic worldview that we're living in. So that's why Frank Turek has to say that the atheist had to steal from the worldview, biblical worldview of the nature grounded by God in order to make their case against God. Even if we just say, let's just go with it that, well, atheistic worldview makes sense. Well, let's question and challenge the atheistic worldview to see whether or not it is logically reasoning or it does really make sense, because they know that they have to try to want to go to absolute, but they want to appeal to their subjectivity, which they're in a dilemma. So that's what I would say responding to Matthias, as I was seeing his comments, and so I would love to have him on,
Yeah.
for a discussion.
Indeed. So Matthias, probably not. I don't know. I'm trying to check with the other stream. I don't know. I can't see how other Jason set it up yet, so I'm not sure if he has or will still. So we can probably carry on for a little bit. But Matthew's got a couple of options here. So you can join the stream if you want. We have a little bit of time. We can at least start a conversation if you like. Hopefully you can see the link. I did pin it. It's got in front of me that it's pinned, but somebody in the chat is saying they can't see it pinned. So we'll have to test that another time. But I've just added it into the chat, the link. So Matthias, you are welcome to join. And we are more than happy to have a discussion now if you like, even though it might be a short one. We can. Here we go. We've got somebody here joining.
Hey there.
Hello. I had a feeling it was you, but
I would love
thank
to
How's
have
it going?
with Matthias.
good. We're just trying to get Matthias to join, but he hasn't yet clicked the link to join yet. So, but the offer and invitation is there. So, yeah. So that we're still offering that for any atheist to join. Based on what you've heard so far, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, atheism is it's kind of an empty lifestyle because I was one for nearly 30 years, and I know how frustrating it is. I actually have a book, Ray. I can send you in your email, and not find
Please,
it in
yeah.
PDF format though. It's called God, the Science, the Evidence at the Dawn of Revolution. It's got loads and loads. It's got about over 500 pages worth of references, even from the Bible as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, please do send details
I
of
can,
that.
I can give you the website, Ray. You can actually check it out if you want.
Yeah. Sure.
It's called God, the Science, the Evidence.com.
God, the Science.
The Evidence. God, the Science, the Evidence.com.
Oh, wow. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, so you can actually buy it in Waterstone, and it cost about £20 or something like that, £22.
Oh, that's not too bad, considering how big it is. Good value for money. So we did have. I don't know if you just read there. Sorry, I've forgotten your name.
My name.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Gareth.
Gareth. Sorry. It's just
You
a
forgot
brain
it.
freeze. Yeah. It's my age, when you're my age, these things happen. Sometimes I forget. Did I have a coffee or not today? I can't remember. Thanks, Gareth. So,
Yeah.
Matthew's made a comment there at the end there. Did you want to respond or throw in your view on what he said there? If you can read it there.
What about?
He says, I'll read it out anyway. He says, I would rather live longer because biologically I am driven to, and intellectually because I am curious. I will live in a greater comfort in a peaceful society.
That's the subjective sentence.
Mm.
Well, I mean, the thing is, when it comes to atheism, I also give an example in history. When they want a peaceful society. Well, I mean, if you go back maybe over 100 years, during, say, the Soviet Union and things like that, because why didn't they live in a peaceful society? Why did over 100 million people get their lives taken? And why was people so against people who believed in God? And then today you've got atheistic societies in the Far East, like North Korea, parts of China. Why are people still losing their lives because they don't believe in God? Why is even parts of Europe still some of the very atheistic societies? I think it's was it like Netherlands, places like that, mainland Europe. Why? Yeah, I mean, why are they complaining about people who believe in God? Why are they it's like being a robot, isn't it? So today, when you go out into even in our own country, you've got kids being brought up taught in things that was unheard of in the 90s.
Indeed. It's
So according to an atheist, then why is that morally okay, but believing in God is a problem? Why? I mean, I can explain that.
That's a good one. I like that. Yeah, why not? Because if it, at the end of the day, is some kind of form of purification of humankind, albeit it's one version versus another, of course, they're not all in agreement. One is, certainly the communist regimes have a very different look. Some of these people like Stalin, Hitler, etc., had a very different view of the purification or moving forward of advancement of the human race. Was another different view, and as you said, you could even go down even to basic societies. There are different views, different laws on how morally is the right thing. It's just so subjective from that perspective, and no one person, no one group, or any time has the absolute handle on what is really absolute truth, what is absolutely right, and what is absolutely wrong. They definitely know intrinsically that it's there, exists, but they can't exactly get to the bottom of why does it exist and where's the purpose of it and where's the source of it. Because if there's no God, then we're just a part of a random process of DNA just evolving, and that leaves everything incredibly subjective because there's nothing that's overriding coming out of that saying that this is the source to decide those moral values. And we see that in everything that is just left to its own devices, it goes in many directions. If human race was just all it was from its evolved being, it will go in many directions. And that's what we see if it was purely under its own merits. Because we don't see a consistency when we just use humans alone making the decisions without going to a moral giver, without going to some ultimate authority. It's just one opinion, one subjective view versus another. And that's what we think, Matthias, is how we would answer that question. As much as I like your point, though, we would like to live longer. But we can't live longer if there's no God because we're just part of a process which just evolves in a way that, unfortunately, has a lifespan. And of course, there are people whose lifespans get dramatically reduced because due to certain moral opinions, they get wiped out because somebody says, well, this is the right thing to do from my perspective, so I'm going to remove certain individuals from this world because they don't fit my standard. And why should we necessarily disagree with that if there's no God? Who's to
Well,
say
yeah,
that
that's a good thing, because then, say if they want to live in a society where it's peaceful, then they've got to do something about that, because they've
Yeah.
got to choose to actually live a moral life, and and also learn to ask questions, and they've got to find the truth, because what they'll do then is I remember Frank Turek once saying something, an atheist will say, well, there is no truth, and then Frank will say to him, well, is that true that there is no truth? So you've got to say, is that true? So you're still got to hold that question back to them.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's what-
so then, or they'll say, "Well, I do not know," but they're not actually looking for the evidence. So if they want evidence in God, then they've got to look for the evidence. They're not, all they're doing is just going around the circles with their own frustration, and they're not really seeking evidence, not asking fundamental questions. But instead, they want to try and attack somebody who believes in God, but yet at the same time, they claim they don't believe God. So how can you attack something you don't believe exists?
Right. I'm going to show a video because this is absolutely... I was just blown away by this small little short, and sometimes these shorts is all you need. I'm going to play it because I think what you said there was very, very, very significant, Gareth. So thank you for sharing that. It just led me to now. I was toying with the idea, shall I play it or not, because we're talking about the moral argument. This is not directly talking about the moral argument, but now the way you've linked it to that thought, I think this is the perfect time to play it. So I'm going to play that now. I've just made a note of it in my notes. I really do like this point, so I'm going to play that now. Share this with everybody, if I can. Here we go. Just give me a second.
Is this a...
Right. Okay, let's share my screen. I've just got to get a better mouse. The mouse I got is just does my head in at times. But anyway, let's see what you think of this.
Question that Christians can't answer? Well, listen to this Christian's answer.
This is part one of questions Christians cannot answer.
Ladies and gentlemen, brace yourselves. The Christian faith has been under attack for 2,000 years by brilliant minds trying to disprove it, and they have failed. But don't worry. This TikTok atheist has found a question that no one has ever thought of before.
First up, who created God?
You're not asking a hard question, you're asking a nonsense question. One of the most basic claims of Christianity is that God is eternal. So when you ask, who created the uncreated God, you self-destruct your own question.
Christians say everything needs a creator, except when it comes to God.
No, the actual argument is everything that begins to exist needs a cause. You can't create yourself.
Why can't the universe itself be the first uncaused cause?
Well, for centuries, that's exactly what atheists did claim. Christians say God is eternal. Atheists said the universe is eternal. And then the 20th century happened. Scientific advances and philosophical arguments showed that the universe had a beginning, meaning it can't be the uncaused first cause.
We're comfortable in the realm of we don't know.
Oh, you're very comfortable in the realm of you don't know because you don't want to know.
What evidence do you have to support this claim that an atheist can't also use to support their claim that it was the universe?
Well, the atheist claim is disproved a century ago. You can't appeal to a self-created universe. That's science fiction. But what can we say about the uncaused first cause? The cause is timeless because time began. The cause is spaceless because space began. The cause is immaterial because matter began. The cause is unimaginably powerful because it made a universe. The cause is unfathomably intelligent because it produced order, laws, and fine-tuning. And the cause is personal because only persons choose. Gravity doesn't decide if it's going to work today, but there was nothing and then there was something, so a choice was made. So we're left with a timeless, spaceless, immaterial, unimaginably powerful, unfathomably intelligent, personal cause of the universe. Sounds a lot like my God.
Is this a question that Christians can't answer? Well, listen to this Christian.
What do you think, guys?
I'm sorry, Ray, what did you say?
What do you think of that video?
Well, yeah, I actually agree with him because she was asking a nonsense question. Because the people have actually got this idea in their head that humans fundamentally created this idea of the creator that doesn't mean like it came from nowhere. So they think, well, who created God? Well, God can't be created because God is uncreated. So at the same time, you'll get other skeptics saying, well, humans created the idea of God because they didn't understand how we got here. But then again, I mean, if we don't understand how we got here, then it could be possibly create something so more powerful than we are. You can't, can you? It's like saying, well, it's like that would be like saying computers created human beings, but yet the person created the human being. Sorry, a person created a computer, but the computer can't create a human being. So you can't create something more powerful than something else.
What do you think, Woody?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I would agree as well. That's like a dumb argument. Who created
Is
God?
Macron's a bit quiet.
Can you hear me now?
No, Woody, Macron's a little bit quiet.
Mic check. Mic check. Check.
I can hear you, Woody, but you're a little bit lower in volume than the rest of us. I'm not sure why.
Okay. So hope that
That's a bit better.
Yeah, I would say that's a dumb argument as well, because that's the argument atheists always uses for the existence of God, to say that, well, who created God, as if we don't know the answer. God is timeless, he is spaceless, he's immaterial, he is eternal. No one can create an eternal God because he was there before all times begun. So when it comes to the atheists, some atheists believe that the universe is eternal. So the universe is eternal. So you believe in an immaterial substance that can be eternal. But another atheist would say that, well, the universe has a cause. If the universe has a cause, something must cause this universe to come to being. So who is this uncaused cause that causes this universe to come into existence? There you get it. Now, if it's Big Bang, all those things are immaterial substance. So is it possible for an immaterial substance that can create an intelligible design? For example, like human beings, do you think that a non-mind comes from, do you think that a billions and billions of mind comes from a non-mind that can be able to create? Even in this universe, it's impossible for an physical conscious being to come from an immaterial substance, even in the beautiful design within this universe. So that's what I would say to the atheists, because their argument is very inconsistent.
Yeah, I picked up two really good points you made there. One is all the scientists that the atheists, shall we say, agree to and accept, all now come to the point, certainly in the 21st century, that the universe had a beginning. That's all the evidence. The science is now strong enough now to put forward a very, very, very solid case that the universe, because of what they now know of the universe in terms of how it's a continuous expanding universe, it therefore logically, without any real debate or question or challenge, that it had a beginning. And so therefore that beginning therefore needs to have a cause to how that got there. And that cause has to be eternal. Otherwise, that would need a cause, and you'd go into infinite regression. So the cause has to always have existed, which is the way Frank made a very good point. It has to be outside of time. It has to be outside of space. And it has to be intelligent. It has to be all-powerful for it to logically make sense. And that's what we call God. God is the most logical explanation for the cause of the beginning of the universe. And therefore, that then proceeds to the point that this cause must be the cause that has the ability to put all what we see in place, including these moral values. So the atheist really has to then ask itself, what's the evidence of this cause? And that's how we're going to kind of close this point on this stream tonight, is we're going to say we know what that cause is, which we call God, because we can prove it. Not just because of the evidence that suggests there's a God, but we're going to take it one step further and prove there's a God on evidence that goes over and above, because the God that we believe is personal. It's a God that actually we can have a connection with. We can have a personal relationship with. We can have evidence of how God answers us directly, personally, in amazing ways that are supernatural, over and above any explanation outside of God. That with the foundation and framework of who this God is, which we see as the best possible case, is through what we see in the Bible as the blueprint of who that God is. He then reveals himself in our lives as the, if you like, final step to prove his existence. We've always got the science, and we've also got the logic and the philosophical views, that it all points to this, what we call God, this superior being that would make more sense, that would exist to explain this universe, explain this world. But we also have one extra element, is that there is a purpose in life that God himself shows himself in, with that purpose connected with a direct personal relationship. And that relationship, that personal connection, is what I would say is the key to this. And the reason why I say that is for this reason. There are many beliefs out there. There are many cases where this is God or this is God. And there are so many gods out there that all claim to be the source of this superior, intelligent, all-powerful being. But this all-powerful being cannot be one inconsistent and have many different versions of itself. It must be only one true existing almighty power. So which of all the different people that are connecting and putting the case for God is the true one, the one that actually, one, makes sense? It has to logically make sense, because an all-powerful God is not going to be deficient of its ability to explain himself and prove himself in a logical way, which we believe is very well described and explained in the Bible, which is why we as Christians believe in the Bible as the source of God. But the fact that it also is a connection, and he does this through his son, Christ Jesus. And it's through that son, if you like, of God himself, that we have the personal evidence of who that true God is, that cannot be denied. And once you receive and experience that true God through Jesus Christ, which we'll go through next week, so I'm leading to next week's episode, is the final proof, is the evidence of God through Jesus Christ, and the evidence of what we see Christianity as the best case to prove who that God is. And that will be for next week. So closing comments, guys, thoughts?
I was just going to say before you finish that there is a lot of skeptics out there that even use the idea from about 6th century BC where the universe didn't have a beginning, even though they don't believe in a creator. And people believed in atomism, or they believed in other kind of weird cosmological fallacies. So it's like you'll get some skeptics there saying like, oh well, they believe the universe has always been there, but they don't believe a creator, built the universe or the planets and the stars and people. So it's like it's a bit of a like they're appealing to mystery really, and then they'll start complaining about the problem of evil. So how can then they complain like there's evil, but yet they don't believe in a creator that created good and evil? So it's like a lot of not just cosmological fallacies, but also like morality problems there, and then they'll just say, well, we just popped into existence, but they don't know where we came from. So there's just lots of issues there that I'd love to go over, over the next few weeks. And so yeah, we can do that. And I think I think these are good lives because it actually makes a good change from talking about Islam, originally. I really like that. Yeah, and so I think it's quite good when we start talking about other topics like this, because this is these kind of arguments is what's really ruining our communities, because when like for example then you would have to start using like the Enlightenment, reasoning, and all this kind of stuff. So this is where we need to like teach the other churches how to tackle these kind of questions. That's what I think.
No, fantastic point. And certainly you'd be welcome to join next week. And you're always welcome, Gareth, and apologies for forgetting your name. I'll have your name blasted I'll have your name plastered all around my room just to make sure I don't forget for next time. So apologies for that. But yeah, love your contribution. And yeah, if you can be there for next week, I'll send you a little draft of what we're planning to talk about. And the same for you, Woody. I really appreciate your input as well, as always valued. So you guys, really, really appreciate your input. And I think it's really going to be an incredibly interesting time when we start delving into the aspects of why we believe a God from a Christian position. It is an incredibly powerful argument, far more than most atheists even think of. And it's only until we start, and we're happy to do this, to put our cards on the table to show why we believe what we believe. This isn't just a belief. This is because it's incredibly convincing and incredibly true to our lives. You know, we have an absolute true testimony of the existence of God in our lives, and that is where it's going to be really powerful. There are some definitely challenges that Gareth did mention. Certainly, you know, if there is a God, why do we see the evil we see? We'll be touching on that next week as well. And before I forget, Woody, closing comments. What are your thoughts, mate?
I would say the gospel is Jesus Christ died, he rose again on the third day, and that by believing in him, you'll be saved, you'll be secured, and that not through our own intellect or worldly pleasures, but our peace and hope is found in Jesus Christ alone for salvation.
Brilliant. Thank you, Woody. Yeah, that's what we believe. That's what we hold to, not because it's just a belief, because we really believe it is absolutely real. Okay, so we're going to close now because we're going to jump in onto another stream. But thank you for all those joining. Matthias, we'll have time and space for you next week, same time, 8 o'clock. We will give you preferential treatment. Please come on. We will happily discuss your views. We are not here to just put our statement without having the atheist position to put their view as well. So you are, because you've made a point already, that you'll be happily welcome to join next week, which will be part 3, if you like, and there may be even further parts, of course, as the discussion develops. That would be very interesting to see where it takes us. And do welcome you all you atheists. Those of you who have been watching, I hope you've enjoyed it. Do hit the like button, subscribe, please. I've got that thing scrolling there for a reason. It's because a part of the way that YouTube works, it helps the promotion and success of the channel. So if you can do that, and of course share it with others, get others to watch and join, and hopefully they can benefit too in these streams. So again, a big welcome and thank you for everyone that have joined. Have a great day. Thank you so much, Woody, for your contribution. As always, it's so valuable, very insightful views as always. So thank you for that. And we will see you next week. We're going to have to, unfortunately, go very quick. So we're going to just jump off onto another stream. But for those who have joined, thank you so much. Until next time, until next week, God bless and take care. Bye-bye.